the 10 o'clock hour, and we are calling the regular session of the Board of Supervisors into session. So if you please take a roll call.
Supervisor Howard. Supervisor Starkey.
Here.
Supervisor Short.
I'm here.
Supervisor Borges.
Here.
Chair Wilson.
Here. And now if we offer a moment of reflection, please. And Supervisor Starkey, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Chair, do we have any introduction of new employees?
Yes. Yeah. New title. Yes, we have our risk manager, Whitney, here today to introduce a new employee in Human Resources.
Human Resources, you said?
Correct, Human Resources. So I am pleased to introduce to you Angelica Hernandez. She joins us transferring from another county department. So she comes with some knowledge of county processes and procedures. We're really excited to have her on the team. So I'll go ahead and let her say a couple of things.
Good morning. It's really nice to see your faces up close because I've only ever seen you on the live stream. So it's nice to see you face to face. I worked for the county for about 13 years. Prior to that, I was served about 5 years in the U.S. Navy. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you both for your service and for going over to HR. We really needed help there. Thank you so much.
And I think that's it, Chair.
Do we have anything to report out of closed session?
No, Chair.
The chair requests any deletions, corrections, additions to the board members of the agenda at this time. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must come before the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Any such action needed or request? Having none. We'll receive brief reports, announcements relative to County of Del Norte programs and projects, process of 2x2 committees, goal committees, etc., board and staff. Travel and training reports. We'll begin with Supervisor Starkey.
Thank you, Chair. So over the last 2 weeks, gone through a couple of meetings. I attended a Performing Arts Center lunch discussion with Nick Rail, Abby Chris, and Candace Tinkler. We're continuing to look for ways in order to find funding that we can put towards the needed $42 million for this project. I attended the Summer Youth Grant Partnership Celebration. The Summer Youth Partnership Grants have been happening in a variety of ways for the past few years from the Wild Rivers Foundation, and they fund various programs that are afforded to our youth during the summertime. So it's fun to see what programs are available and the hard work that these nonprofits are doing. I attended the Visitor Bureau meeting. We had an opportunity to hear from our marketing consultant about the scope of work that she has planned out for the next fiscal year. That includes paid media, marketing services, website services, public relations, and the North Coast Tourism Council. The Visitor Bureau hears this report, so what we do is we hear the report, we ask questions, and we provide some guidance and direction as to where we want her to spend her energy. After that, I attended the monthly Chamber of Commerce meeting, and we approved the Visitor Bureau budget as well as the Chamber's budget. Neither entity has an enormous budget, so it's not very complicated, and the money's easily tracked, and it's a very digestible budget. I participated in a NACO briefing, a National Association of Counties briefing. I met with other California supervisors who will be attending the NACO conference this week. I'm also attending this week in Tampa, Florida, as the representative for Del Norte County, and I appreciate that opportunity. I attended the city council meeting. I participated in an opioid litigation group meeting. We're still working on the journey mapping to determine what's the best way to present information to the entire Board of Supervisors as well as the public with regard to how we want to allocate that opioid litigation money and what would be most effective in our community to help curb the opioid crisis. I set up and participated in all the 4th of July activities and the deck party activities. That is all the sanctioned events that the Chamber of Commerce puts on, so the beachfront, sanctioned fireworks, and the deck party and those events. The parade was well attended this year and a lot of great floats. I get to be a judge every year, and that's always a rewarding opportunity for me. After the 4th of July, I did participate in the Redwood Parks Conservancy, the Smith River Alliance, and the Caltrans beach cleanup on July 5th. The total weight of trash that we recovered, not including recyclables, was 2,500 pounds, and over 100 volunteers showed up that day to participate in the cleanup, and it's enormous. I also want to just say that high tide comes in and takes the majority of that trash out into our ocean. So I'm happy to see a lot of you here today to perhaps even address that. I fielded just countless calls regarding the events that took place on South Beach the night of the 4th of July. And what I am hoping is today I see a lot of you here, most likely here to address that as well. I just want to say that we're not going to be able to engage in a back and forth with you today, but it will be our hope to put it on a future agenda so that we can hear your ideas and your suggestions that you bring forward and see what we can't do to affect some significant changes if that is what this community wants. We work for you, and I just want to reiterate that. And then finally, I participated in a small house home discussion with some concerned community members with regard to a burglary of their home. It happened last year. People came into their home. They lived there for 3-4 days. It wasn't until neighbors alerted the authorities. They caught them in the act, and yet no charges were filed, no convictions were sustained, and these people are rightfully upset. So we got together for a home discussion to talk about ways in which we can improve that in the future, because we definitely deserve better here in Del Norte County. Thank you.
Supervisor Howard.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. I was on family vacation for the last 3 weeks. Haven't had much contact other than returning to the community in the last couple of days. I have, like many of you, received a tremendous number of phone calls specific to the 4th of July and looking forward to hearing public comment today. Thank you.
Supervisor Short, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As for county business, only had a few meetings. Transportation Commission, Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, and Housing and Services Subcommittee meeting. Don't have a lot to report out from them, but I would like to take the opportunity to give some kudos to the Sheriff's Office. On Wednesday, the 26th of June, we had a large commercial building burned down at 645 Elk Valley Road. It destroyed a large number of crab pots and all the associated equipment that goes along with that for multiple commercial fishermen. And there's also multiple vehicles in there as well. Somebody's operation was completely destroyed as well. Because of that large loss, the sheriff opted to open a case, even though the physical evidence at the site had been largely consumed by the fire. So as far as physical evidence goes, there was little hope of finding, the source or anything that could have happened. But I am happy to say that he assigned Sergeant McLaughlin to that case, and she has made an arrest. So that's, even though that doesn't make the loss any better, I just got to say to have so little evidence left over and then have an arrest happen so quickly after the case is opened. It's pretty remarkable. So I just wanted to give the sheriff and Sergeant McLaughlin kudos for the work done there. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Borges. Just want to say, over this past 2 weeks, we did have lots of meetings with different staff over a lot of our issues, especially leading up into the dealing with our strategic plan going forward, as well as other issues that are ahead of and in front of the board this time. Attended the 4th of July, attended many of the events, celebrated my 67th birthday. So during this period of time, so that was a lot of my 2 weeks, and with that, we will close comments. This will bring us up to consent agenda. This is any public member that has any comments to make as regard to the consent agenda. If you have any comments on the consent agenda, please come forward and make your comments. This is only dealing with the consent agenda.
Hi, sorry. Listen, the one on number 15, I kind of think that should be vetted out to the public so we know what's going on, because you're talking about, it was confusing for me to read. You're talking about taxes and switching money here and there, and you know what? That needs to be vetted out completely to the public, so I'm placing you on notice. Cure and correct. Thank you.
My name is Sandy Moreno. Today I'm wearing the hat of the treasurer for the Klamath Community Services District. You have item number 3 on there to approve our request for a 3-year audit period. And I just wanted to let you know that I am available should there be any questions if it doesn't pass consent.
Thank you.
This is a topic that's come before this board on a number of occasions in that the consent agenda, the current length is 15 items. I believe last 2 weeks ago, it was 26 items. Yet the public is only allowed a 3-minute comment section on the numerous items that, for all practical purposes, should reside in general government instead of on the consent agenda. I would hope that at some point, very quickly, the board would consider changing the policy of allowing only 3 minutes for the consent agenda. Typically, the Department of Health and Human Services dominates the consent agenda. Very often, we have no real feel for what the Department of Health and Human Services does on the consent agenda, and it would be enlightening for the public to at least be able to comprehend some of the items that appear on the consent agenda, particularly in terms of how much these items cost, how many people are involved in some of these programs that in many cases do not exist in the county. Also for professional services, one wonders what exactly we're getting for the thousands of dollars that are allocated to these programs. I understand that they're mandated, but it would seem that transparency is in order, particularly when you throw them on the consent agenda, which typically passes in a 5-0 response, and we are left wondering very often what has happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, bring it to the board.
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, if I may, let's just, if we could briefly, with the CAO's help, address item number 15, the LAFCO decision, more importantly, the revenue split between the Smith River Fire Protection District and the county. If the CAO could briefly address that, I think that would be helpful for maybe some members of the audience.
Yes, this was an annexation request by the Smith River Fire Protection District to expand their sphere of influence in the Smith River area for property that they don't currently have in their sphere of influence. And with that, the Revenue and Taxation Code requires the notice to be sent out to all affected jurisdictions with the property tax allocation of the revenue that's generated in that area. And at board direction, the county staff negotiated the settlement of the property tax arrangement with Smith River Fire Protection District in good faith. And this is what's before you today on the agenda.
Thank you, Neil.
Do we have a motion?
I move we approve consent.
Any second?
Thank you. I'd second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments from the board? Seeing none, pull the vote.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Burgess,
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
Yes. We're ahead of schedule. Since we have some time, we're going to move to item number 20, move and approve the authorized use of additional Measure R funds for the construction of a public parking improvement project located at the Veterans Memorial Hall, Delaware County Sheriff's Office, jail, Delaware County Courthouse, as requested by the administration. Is there any public comment onto number 20?
We're 3 years, or a bit over 3 years, into the Measure R collection of the 1% additional sales tax in the county. Thus far, at least at last meeting, it appears that 80% of that money is now encumbered by salaries and benefits. It is amazing that the Board of Supervisors has the chutzpah to spend $384,000 on 2 parking lots in the county and call that infrastructure repair, road repair. If that is a recommendation by the current advisory committee, they ought to be replaced, and something ought to be done with this money that actually represents some vital need for the community, because I believe this is being described as vital to the community. And I, for one, have maybe in the entire 50 years of being a resident of Delaware County, have perhaps parked my car in the Veterans Hall parking lot maybe twice, and most often that parking lot is empty. So I'm really having a difficult time understanding how the Board of Supervisors can consider that vital. The sheriff's parking lot, another item that's considered vital for the community. It's appalling that you should be able to address those particular needs for the county as vital to the overall citizenry here in Delaware County. This is an item that should not be developed, and $384,000 should not be used out of Measure R to fund these 2 projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board.
I have a few questions, Chair, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
So the amount increased, was that actually run by the Measure R committee and approved by the Measure R advisory committee? I'm just asking the question.
I can address that. No, the increase was not brought forward to the Measure R. The actual project is endorsed and recommended by the Measure R committee. This came in with the bids that we were aware of this, and due to the timing and how long this project's been put off, we wanted to bring it to the board for the requested increase.
Okay, but are we going against our policy by not asking the Measure R committee?
No. The board has discretion over these funds. We try to run everything we can past the Measure R committee, and like I said, this project's already been endorsed by them. The increase in funding was not presented to them, but it doesn't violate any policy.
Okay. What is our current fund balance of the Measure R?
I would probably have to have the auditor controller speak to that, but I think it's around $3 million.
$3 million? Yeah,
I'm
that's
I'm guessing, yeah.
that's what I'm showing in the budget as well, but I just
Okay.
wanted to double check that I wasn't wrong. Was this ever discussed to have our engineer act as the project manager for this? I mean, and I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that question. When I look at the bid proposal forms, and I understand that we might not have the capacity here locally, but when I look at the bid proposal forms and we have $85,000 for mobilization for one contractor and $60,000 for mobilization of another contractor, that's essentially just bringing their equipment into our community. We have the equipment here with our roads department. Goes back to our discussion last week that if our roads department was fully operational, perhaps we could have acted as the project manager, saved that money, and then number one, we're then just putting money from one pocket into another pocket instead of from our pocket into the hand of the contractor. Was there any discussion to have our engineer act as the project manager?
Yes, initially when this project was first brought forward, it was discussed with engineering, and it was in fact a capacity issue. So yeah, the engineering department was the one that developed the initial preliminary estimate for us to be able to utilize to obtain the design.
Okay. If our roads department was fully operational, fully staffed, fully skilled in their jobs, this could have been an in-house job being completed. Is that correct?
I would have to defer to our county engineer for that. Again, I think it's the capacity abilities, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want, Tidewater, who it looks like we're going to be choosing to do this job, they're subcontracting the majority of this work out. And when I look at that, I'm, happy for them. But they're subcontracting almost all this work out. They're having the fence built by somebody else, specialized pavement markings, 100% someone else. We need to start really thinking about, shouldn't we be making our departments, our internal departments, capable of being able to do this work in order to save this kind of money? I'm going to be voting yes on this today, but I want it to be known that we have to start looking at ways in which we can save the money. We're not a really rich county. So any way that we can save money, I think it's time for us to start looking to do that.
I'm not an expert in the public contract code, but I believe when you exceed a certain dollar threshold, you are not able to do an in-force project. You have to put it out to bid. I think it's $200,000. I'm not positive on that. And maybe then John can speak to that if he's here, but I think that once it exceeds a certain threshold, it has to go out to bid.
So we can't do our own work if it's over 200,000. That doesn't seem to make sense because a lot of our road work in and of itself costs way more than 200,000.
Like I said, I'm kind of referring to a section in the admin manual. I think that's what it says, but I'm not positive. I'd have to read it again.
Yeah. That's all I have, Chair.
Just a quick question based on Supervisor Starkey's points. Obviously, we don't have the capacity right now, but Supervisor Starkey made the statement specific to cost of the project. Obviously, we have two bids in. Do we know what the county could have done the project for, all in?
I don't believe that engineering department has-
Supervisor Starkey, do you know the cost that the county could have done the project for? You said that we could save money. I'm just curious how much money we could save.
Well, we absolutely, I mean, if you have mobilization just in and of itself, and Supervisor Borges probably could speak to this more because this is his wheelhouse, but mobilization for $60,000 just to bring equipment in, and that includes everything, right? That includes their gas, that includes their time, that includes everything to bring that equipment in. It would, I don't know, cost us a half a mile worth of gas to bring it from the roads department over to these places. So there's some savings that could be there. Had we acted as, and if there's a code that says we are not allowed to do our own projects because they hit a certain threshold, let's look to change that, because we certainly could do that if we had a fully operational roads department, which goes to my argument last week or the last time that we were here. We need to start really kind of looking internally on how we can save this county money instead of just accepting that we have to put it out for bid. If that's going to be the obstacle, let's change that.
And I would just like to say, I know that our road department could do this for a fraction of the cost. I mean, they have everything that's out there. Again, they don't have anybody that can run it, not to the level and still complete their daily tasks. So I fully agree with what you're saying, except it's kind of a non-issue at this point. If we want to complete these tasks, I mean, unless we want to wait for years down the road. But I fully agree that roads, this is right in their wheelhouse with the equipment and the skill sets that they should have in there, but it's a non-issue at this point.
I just wanted to chime in to Mr. Lopez's point. When I was on the city council, we needed to replace a radiator on the big generator at the sewer treatment plant. And we had to go out for RFP, and I thought that was kind of foolish because it's a relatively simple repair. Come to find out, the radiator itself cost $55,000, and that exceeded our threshold, and we had to go out for RFP. So there is a threshold out there. How that works with the road department and work on roads, maybe that's an exemption. But there is something out there that is a trigger for us to go out for RFP. So.
And my
Just wanna throw
apologies
that
for
out
not
there.
having done that homework to know that. But nonetheless, if that is a trigger out there, this will be my next assignment for the next 2 weeks. I will look at that and bring it back to the board to see if we can't alter that.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I will second.
Have a motion and a second. Please poll the vote.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Borges,
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
Yes. And that brings us to our timed item at 10:25. And this is where I think most of you are here for. Members of the public may address the board on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until that board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Also, I would ask that if someone has come up and has made the exact same comments that you're going to make, and you just want to come up and please just agree to what they said. If you have any additional comments that you want to add to enhance the statement, please do so. Because there's a lot of you here today, and I don't want to not only take up a lot of time if all that's going to be said is repeating the same event, the same request over and over again. Also, there will be no discussion from the board. This is not a give and take here. We're not here to answer questions. We're here to listen to you and to take your concerns forward with us. With that, we open the floor for comment.
Hi, everybody. I'm probably going to get emotional. I don't know if anybody has any tissues handy. Nope. Okay. Today I speak first and foremost as a mother. My son is my entire world. He is almost 3 years old. When I heard what happened to Billy on the 4th, my heart dropped. I spent the day crying and reaching out to others in the community. What I found was a vast wave of grief and a huge desire, excuse me, to see change. That change, thank you, must start with you. Do not pass the buck on this one. Dig deep within your souls and look past your personal politics and look at that child and the family hurt on our watch, on our shores. This cannot stand. To do nothing would be a tacit acceptance. Do not tell me there's nothing you can do. Excuse me. There are things to be done that are long overdue. Make a discussion available to the public to workshop a plan, examine the budget to explore how our sheriff's department can be supported in the future to ensure sweeps of the beach for illegal camping and mortars in the days beforehand. Have a paddy wagon present for arrests in the field. If there needs to be volunteers deputized that day, I don't know if that's a thing that can be done. I will be the first to volunteer. Put the word out and do it. And look to the community. Look into alternative entertainment for the public besides drinking and blowing up stuff, like creating a downtown area for festivities to help support local businesses. Look into the cutting edge displays people are now seeking out in the form of drone shows. Have fire go around writing citations to be sent in the mail like other counties did. But above all, do something. Other counties were proactive this 4th. And meanwhile, not only were we not proactive, but we now have a child's future on our hands. So whatever you do, do something for Billy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mario Westphal, 27-year county resident. Attending the Crescent City 4th of July festivities used to truly be a fun event with a Mayberry-type flair. The entire county would come together, and with a few visitors as well, everybody had a good time. However, over the years, that 4th of July celebration has grown into a monster of a spring break and Daytona Beach-like celebration, with Crescent City being overrun by tourists, a plethora of alcohol and drug-induced mayhem, and free-for-all use of illegal fireworks, leaving our streets and beaches a trashy mess. Not saying that only tourists are to blame, as you can hear fireworks being set out throughout the year at all hours. Look, we all know you can't fix stupid. There'll always be bad actors among us. Reality is our local public services will have a potential to be easily overwhelmed. I've spent a 37-year career in emergency services in a major metropolitan fire department and have a good understanding of the challenges that are presented themselves when we knew we could have potential mass casualty incident at our hands, either for an event or conditions. Therefore, pre-planning is key. We all knew that there would be a large influx of visitors, there would be alcohol consumption and illegal fireworks. In addition to that, we had a weather forecast of triple-digit temperatures. What could possibly go wrong? As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was no coordinated effort between the county and city officials as well as public service departments to have a pre-deployment action plan that would minimize any issue and provide a more safe environment for locals and visitors alike. Of course, I do recognize the challenges it presents to our local departments with minimal staff at hand. However, that does not excuse the overall inaction over the years to do nothing, to at least attempt to have a preemptive measures in place and mitigate this ever-growing issue. There's no way to prevent all illegal fireworks to enter our county, but there are a multitude of means to deter and minimize the presence and use. It certainly appears that collectively, city and county officials have failed and basically enabled this out-of-control behavior that finally led to the incidents of last Thursday. If anyone is surprised by the events of last Thursday, they're asleep at the wheel. Collectively, the city and county have set the tone and created a fireworks culture in Crescent City that has drawn people from other cities where this activity has been strictly prohibited and enforced. Having an actual plan for prevention coupled with enforcement is the key to deter and minimize the illegal activities that we're all subjected to. If public assistance is needed to accomplish a more safe environment for the 4th of July, there's many local residents that are willing to help. Create a volunteer force. There's meaningful and creative ways to make a more hospitable environment. Please don't just occupy elected office and when the going gets tough, say, well, what do you want us to do? You and the supervisors before you wanted this job. You were elected to manage our county, and at times that might not be easy.
Thank you, Mario.
Come on. You guys, just give me a couple more seconds, please. Okay, I'm not going to take up any large time. Okay. You owe it to the community as well as that little boy and his family to fight for his life. Like the woman before me said, do something. And just a quick note is, as far as I know, so the sheriff took incident command. There has not been a public statement to the community of a quick rundown of what actually occurred. Obviously, it's under investigation, but here we are almost a week into it, and nothing is being said.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Linda Sutter, and I'm an investigative reporter for CrescentCityTimes.com online newspaper. My phone number is 707-951-3048. In case any personal injury attorney would like to get a hold of me, I do have evidence and documents to share with him to file personal injury against the county. Today, I come before you with a heavy heart and pressing concern for the safety and well-being of our community, particularly 4th of July celebrations. Recent events have highlighted glaring gaps in our current ordinances and planning, and it's imperative that you take swift and decisive action to prevent further tragedies. Firstly, our current signage prohibits overnight camping, but fails to address a critical issue, parking after 9. This oversight has led to congestion and hindered emergency access. Updating the signage immediately to clearly state no parking after 9. And furthermore, strict enforcement measures will need to be implemented. The use of illegal fireworks on beaches poses an unacceptable risk to public safety. The sign must state no illegal fireworks allowed. These fireworks are not only dangerous, but have already resulted in a tragic incident where a 3-year-old child was critically injured and currently fighting for his life. Our hearts go out to him and his family. Alcohol must also be prohibited as well, as we all know was a part of this tragic accident. The signage needs to state no alcohol use. Anyone violating these regulations will face search and seizure, ensuring accountability and compliance. Lastly, the law needs to be enforced by the Sheriff's Department. I don't want to hear that we don't have the staff. You find the staff. You request for other agencies, but you don't sit on your ass and hope for the best. Tell me again why we're paying taxes. Reflecting on recent events, it is clear that silence and inaction are no longer options for this board. What happened this past week could have been prevented. And as you all well know, waking up one day and saying, I want to be a supervisor, when you have no knowledge of what's been occurring these past years, does not mean you're a good supervisor. It demonstrates your ignorance for not knowing the history of this county and not being proactive in the safety and security of our community. Folks, you've all known about this for years. And I've been up here preaching for years to do something about that, and it went blind and deaf. Now you got tragedy on your hands. Take care of it.
Thank you.
My name is Marcia Morgan, and this is my husband, Dale Morgan. First of all, everyone here is terribly upset about the little boy, the troubles for his family. We wish him well, a speedy recovery, and hope he and his family can get through this terrible drama they've been faced with. Okay, so I'd like to make a few points, and I'll keep it brief. My husband and I experience incredibly loud fireworks going off for weeks before the 4th out in the Birch Tract, which is county. I guess you call them mortars, cherry bombs. Back in the day, they called them M80s. I don't know what they are, but they're devastatingly loud. Every year we call the Sheriff's Department, and while they duly take down the call, we know there isn't much that can be done because of lack of staff. These kind of loud noises are nerve-wracking and terribly harmful to wildlife, domestic animals, and of course humans. Every year we see cats and dogs, both feral and pets, running down the streets away from these events. I find pets in our yard. Last year I found a cat shaking and cowering by our fence. Every year pet owners post in our neighborhood group about their lost cats and dogs. Every year people post about having found lost cats and dogs, and a neighborhood horse ranch told of the trauma to their horses. Fireworks are also very harmful to wildlife and humans in another way. They are toxic to our lungs, toxic to the ocean. They're also full of plastics that end up in the ocean. We can talk about cleaning up the beaches after the events, but what about the toxins and plastics that remain in the oceans? I know that talking about the possibility of having public display only, public sanctioned fireworks that are displayed by the city in a safe manner and by people who are following the rules and are knowledgeable about safety measures. I know that's upsetting to the people who make a living selling fireworks. I know that the sellers are only selling the safe fireworks and that the illegal fireworks are being bought elsewhere by irresponsible idiots and are being brought here to shoot off as they please. And we don't have the manpower to police it in our small community. Maybe we could come up with a compromise of some sort. Maybe we could continue the sale of safe fireworks, but have them sanctioned at supervised events. We'd like to see the fireworks out of our neighborhoods. People are very sentimental about them, I know, but what are we talking about here? Safe as they may be, they are still loud, they're still toxic. When you talk about the fun that children may be missing out on, what are we talking about? Toxins are not fun, not safe.
Oh, sorry, thank you so much.
I just have 2 more sentences. They're carcinogenic. Loud noise that harms humans, pets, and wildlife is not fun. It's harmful. Let's put that in perspective. Let's talk about the toxins and harmful hearing loss that we'll be missing out on. And people, a whole other issue people are talking about is the fire conditions we're experiencing every year.
Thank you.
Okay, wait, one more, please. Please.
You let the people talk, for God's sake.
No,
This is an emotional thing. Oh, I just don't.
we need to,
Let
there are
me-
so many people that have to
Right.
give time to talk.
I just have a short sentence. Banning fireworks in our neighborhood is not such a far-fetched idea. It's being done in a lot of places across the U.S. We could continue to have the sanctioned city event. We could have sanctioned children's
Thank you.
events. To us, that would be a great compromise that everyone could live with. Thank you for your time and considering these thoughts.
Hi, guys. I'm Rose Rapond. I used to work for the county. I know a lot of you here today. I was next to them, and I had 8 friends from Bend and Willows, and they had been here videotaping all day long and doing their fireworks. They weren't doing fireworks. They were just enjoying their day from out of the area. I came down after the parade, and everything was great. You know, the event in town was great. This is going to affect us for a long time. I'm waiting for the surgeon to call me so I can get my hands fixed. I was next to that little baby watching him play. He had sand in his mouth. He was just 3 years old playing with our little strings. And this is really bad, you guys. You need to do something. I didn't come up here to dig on anybody because the staff out there, after they got there, were great. We were sitting there videoing. I got a 7.5-minute video. Fireworks were going off. Everything was fine. Then shit hit the fan, and things hit other fireworks, and it was a war zone. It was a bad war zone. I had to go bury my head in the sand. I got shrapnel in my head. We were pulling glass and plastic out of our bodies. 8 of 9 of us, my group, were in the emergency room. So I appreciate everybody, but you guys really have to do something. This is not. I've been here 30 years. I worked for the county. I know what goes on. Somebody needs to do something. I'm going to lose my finger over this. So I want to say the Sheriff's Department did a great job. Someone had to pick me up and bring me to the road. I buried my head in the sand like it was a war zone. So you guys have to do something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Pull the microphone closer to you. Thank you.
This is emotional. I was born with epilepsy. I haven't watched fireworks in 30 years because they trigger my epilepsy. I know someone that would donate drones to do a drone show to fix health issues. So it could fix people with PTSD, animals to calm them down. So people with epilepsy could watch fireworks. And people wouldn't get hurt or anything on the 4th of July like that little boy. My neighbor blew his hand off before the 4th of July, putting off a firework. I think the 4th of July was just messy.
Thank you.
Does anyone here live near Inyo and Pacific? You hear the big booms every night? Those are my neighbors. Every night at 10 o'clock, these idiots down the street from me set off mortars. It's been going on for ages. The neighbors told me that the police have been there numerous times and nothing ever changes. 10 o'clock at night. This has gone on way too long. I have a picture of the house. I have the address and everything if somebody wants it. It just gets me that illegal fireworks are allowed in this town. Years ago, we were down at Beachfront, and we put the baby down to sleep in a tent. And these drunk idiots near us set off fireworks, and a mortar went right into the tent. It's the last time we went down there. These idiots spoil it for everybody else. What can go wrong? Alcohol and explosives. What can go wrong? Have you ever seen the pictures of some of these people that had explosives in their hands? I mean, it looks like somebody just shattered it. They're stupid. They're drunk. This needs to stop. It really needs to stop. We need to do something in this community. We have a wonderful community, I just moved back in March. Living in Portland, my apartment complex was destroyed in an ice storm. I would still be in Portland. I love the city, but I also love my family, so I'm here. I feel so bad for that family with that little boy. I mean, how horrible. But it could have been prevented. With patrols, it could have been prevented. We need to do something, and we need to do it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm the last one. My name is Jeannie Westfall, and my husband spoke first, but and everyone else said everything, so I'll just get to the point. But there is like the woman said there, a plethora of illegal fireworks that are gone off all the time, all year long. One on our street, Church Tree Road. And I've called the sheriff several times. Nothing is done. They come out, they talk in the driveway like they're friends. I watch from my deck above. They leave, they continue on. A few years ago, I ended up in the emergency room in a cardiac arrhythmia. That was very dangerous. I was put on several medications and ultimately ended up months later in the hospital in Medford for a cardiac conversion because I was startled out of bed at 2 a.m. by a mortar by our neighbor. My husband spoke with him. He said, "Get your wife earplugs, give your pets drugs." So it's the sheriff's department, police department, somebody that needs to mitigate this problem because it's rampant all year long. People have heart issues. I don't anymore, thank God, but I could again because just like she said, they're startling. They go all over the place. I have video of them. The sheriff never came to my house, even though I gave my address and phone number to come and look at the video that I told the dispatcher I had, how high they were, how they were spewing all over the place. And it's just unacceptable that these are going off last night, sitting in bed, not on my street, but in town. Because I live on a hill, can see in town what the weather is before we come in. But it's got to stop. We leave town now. For the last 4 years since that happened, we leave town on 4th of July to go somewhere where it isn't legal. And we have a quiet camp.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ray Franklin. I live off of Church Tree Road. We built our house there in 1979. It was my parents' house. I've inherited that. Church Tree is a war zone now. I'm just following up what their complaints are. Used to be a quiet, beautiful neighborhood. One of the problems with this, where these fireworks are going off, across from the road is just an open field of tall, dry grass. And if nobody knows, insurance companies are canceling people left and right. And this jerk that lives on Church Tree, at 1:30 in the morning, July 4th, my house was shaking and it looked like the sky was white. That's how bad it is out there. And I've called and complained too with nothing. And this guy he doesn't just start on 4th of July. He starts back in May. And then all kinds of random times. And where's the preventative measures here to shut this guy down? I mean, this is ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess it's tragedy to get more than 2 or 3 members of the public to come to a Board of Supervisors meeting. Typically, when I come to a meeting, and I've been to 1 or 2, the public is hardly represented. And when the public is here, it seems like they'd be better served to have 5 portraits painted on the back wall, because that's about as much attention the public gets to the comments that are made. When I spoke earlier about Measure R, I wasn't concerned about the money. I was concerned about how that particular project could be considered vital to this community. I haven't attended a fireworks performance on South Beach for probably 30 or 40 years, because 30 or 40 years ago, this was a potential problem for our town, and it hasn't gotten any better over the years. So it's not only incumbent upon the 5 of you that are sitting here today to do something about it. We've needed to do something about it for years, decades. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am here to echo everybody else's sentiments. What I want to say is, if you need help, if the sheriff department needs help, look at how many people we had out there picking up garbage. There are people that will volunteer. I'll be the first to raise my hand. But something needs to be done, because this goes on year round. And now that this has happened, if you all want your jobs next year, something better be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm going to address the council today, and I first want to say our thoughts and prayers go out to those that are injured, those that are fighting due to injury because of a terrible, tragic accident that happened during the 4th of July. I'd also like to thank our first responders, our police department, for their rapid response. If they weren't there, then things could have been tremendously worse. Now, I'm going to also say something that I haven't heard said yet in this discussion, and that is 4th of July in Crescent City is a special and unique time. I've been to places in Los Angeles, I've lived in Tacoma, Washington, I've lived in Arcata, Eureka, and all of those 4th of July celebrations are heavily enforced with firework laws, and people still get severely injured. And on top of that, it's not the spectacle that you see here in Crescent City. This is truly a unique celebration that I don't believe happens anywhere else on the West Coast. It's a special time for me. It's a special time for thousands of people in Crescent City who enjoy the fireworks. So I think that we need to, of course, think about ways to improve safety. We need to think about ways to always improve safety in events like this. But at the same point in time, we need to be rational. Are we going to deputize a whole bunch of people and send them out onto the beach to try and enforce these laws? Are we going to import police officers from other areas to come in, separating them from their families to come and try to enforce these laws? One of the other things is when you are talking about this situation, you need to also realize that if you were to stop this celebration, you would not stop illegal fireworks. People would end up shooting them in other places, such as Smith River, such as Klamath, up in the hills. So where would be the safest place to shoot fireworks? In the water, I'm speaking, please. So where would be the safest place to shoot fireworks? Next to a large body of water that is also sandy. Another thing is, I don't go to South Beach because when I look at that, I say that that seems to be a very dangerous place to be. If you had any type of common sense, I don't know why you would bring a child to that location and think that that was okay. We need to start using our common sense when we're talking about things like this and realize that there are two things I suggest. One thing, we deputize people or hand out more licenses to actually use these fireworks, create zones, and the only people allowed to shoot these illegal fireworks
Thank you.
are those people who are licensed. The other thing is
Thank you.
a safe zone on Front Street for people with children.
Mark Bauer. I have a couple of comments, and that is what happened was absolutely a tragedy to that family. And as far as the illegal fireworks, those people firing them off, they knew they were illegal when they brought them here. And I will go on to say that basically our community and law enforcement has failed us. And in every way, and it does it day in and day out. From the illegal marijuana use that's happening in our community, we're allowing this illegal marijuana to happen with people driving down the roads. They're parking and they're smoking along Pebble Beach. It happens every day. Bike use, I watch law enforcement drive right on by. People on the wrong side of the road, people crossing. Last week I had a CHP officer stop and let an electric bike drive through a crosswalk. Crazy. And I will say this much more for the board. We need to really seriously look at a homeless ordinance. I know we've created an encampment that we're going moving forward to, but with what's happened over in Grants Pass right now, those people are going to come here because they're going to kick them out of Grants Pass and they're coming here. And if we don't deal with it now, we're going to have a big problem in our hands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, and yes, how could you not echo what everyone has said? And our thoughts and prayers with the people that were injured. Yes, I'm just encouraging you to find your influence. I know I've said that before, but we do have something special here. It's a delicate situation, you know, fireworks, guns, you know, it's almost along the same lines, you know, when you start taking them away. So it is delicate. I appreciate what you guys are trying to do, but I just want you guys to do more or do something other than just write letters and talk about it. You know, we had a great parade. We saw all the wonderful fire trucks. Bless our firefighters, you know, for being there. You know, we have the resources to do things here, whether it's paving or keeping people safe, right? So why are we not? You know, what is our plan? You know, you're the consent agenda, straight from Newsom, isn't it? Do you guys read it? I mean, $420,000 for a hazard mitigation plan. Maybe we could incorporate fireworks into that. Or where is that money going? What do we see for that? More fire trucks? More people? I'm glad to see that. I think I heard the Sanders case, there was an arrest. Good job, Linda. That's amazing. I mean, thanks for the mom to come forward. Finally. Bless her. But just do something. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, that brings us to our 10:30 time item. We're behind schedule. Border Coast Regional Airport Authority Economic Impact Study presentation.
Thank you all for
we'll
coming.
hear from Ryan Cooley, the Airport Authority.
I would be remiss to not say thank you all for coming, and we'll put it on the next agenda if the chair will have it. Thank you.
Nobody wants to hear about the airport?
Shall I wait, or?
Yeah. Yeah. If you have any discussions, you can clear outside. We're trying to present. Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Wilson, supervisors, thank you. Thank you for having me today. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a long time coming, but I'm happy to be here. I'm Ryan Cooley, the Airport Director for the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, and just want to share with you our economic impact study that was done last year by our Valair Aviation Consultants. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of this, airport economic impact studies attempt to define the economic impact of airport-dependent economic activity. The study area for the analysis for this study was Del Norte County and Curry County, which incorporate all of our JPA members. Basic economic impact theory states that the economic activity has at minimum three impacts. Direct impact, which is the measure of the jobs and spending at the airport. Indirect impact, which is the ripple effect of the economic activity beyond the airport, but resulting from the direct effect, airport jobs, income, and spending. And then induced impact, the third level of impact, which measures economic activity generated by people and businesses benefiting from the indirect impact of the airport. So our regional airport, the Del Norte County Regional Airport at Jack McNamara Field, is situated 20 miles south of the California-Oregon border via Highway 101 on the Northern California Pacific Ocean coast. It's located approximately 3 miles northwest of the town of Crescent City and covers over 544 acres on Point St. George, which is south of the Tallahwa Dunes State Park, east of the Pacific Ocean, and west of Highway 101. The Border Coast Regional Airport Authority is a California Joint Powers Authority. The JPA is composed of the County of Del Norte County, the City of Crescent City, Elk Valley Rancheria, the Tallahwa Dene Nation, Curry County, and the City of Brookings. So in 2023, Valair Aviation Consulting performed an airport economic impact study for us using 2023 dollars for 2022 statistics. Our airport is an economic engine for the Border Coast area and surrounding region. The overall findings, total estimated annual airport regional economic output is $22.6 million. On-airport economic impact via direct, indirect, and induced effect is 98 full-time equivalent jobs with $6.8 million in annual labor income and $20.4 million in annual economic output. This makes the airport by itself one of the largest employers in the region. Our airport is an economic engine for the Border Coast area and our surrounding region. It's very important to hit that home. Our visitor by air local spending supports via direct, indirect, and induced effect nearly 21 full-time equivalent jobs with $719,590 in annual labor income and $2.2 million in annual economic output. Combined, airport and visitor by air economic activity supports 119 local full-time equivalent jobs, producing $7.5 million in annual labor income. While we did our economic impact study, we also did a catchment leakage study as well to help figure out exactly where our current catchment area population travel needs seem to be. So our catchment leakage study collected data from March 2022 through March 2023. 6 California and 5 Oregon zip codes were included. The airport catchment area generates 143,000 annual airline trips. I wish they were all out of Crescent City, but unfortunately they're not. Medford captured 64% of the domestic traffic, Crescent City captured 12%, and Eureka captured 10%. Our catchment area top 4 domestic markets are the LA area, Seattle, Denver, and the San Francisco Bay Area. This study was done when Contour Airlines was here, providing service just to Oakland. We've now have service scheduled with Advanced Air, and I'm happy to report that our Los Angeles service is very popular. With us now being able to tap into that LA Basin market, my hope is to capture some of that 64% that's going to Medford and bring that back into our region. So the continued use of our region's primary commercial airport will ensure continued economic growth, not only for our airport, but for our community and our region as a whole. And as a wise airport director once said, we are all in this together as a community comprised of cities, counties, states, and sovereign nations. And when communities build airports, airports build communities, and Jack McNamara Field is our community's airport. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Appreciate it. Thanks so much. At this point in time, we'll be adjourning as the Board of Supervisors and reconvening as the Board of Equalization. Oh, too early? Ah, it's 11:15. Sorry, we got to wait a little bit. We have to wait. I'm looking. It's a timed item. Sorry.
Chair, I think Sam wants to speak publicly on the Bakra presentation.
Okay.
I don't travel extensively, but the current circumstances at the Crescent City Airport for the last, dozen or so years have made it pretty useful or pretty useless for me with regard to travel. You did note in the presentation that 64% of the area goes to Medford to travel. It does it for a reason, because going to Oakland has been pretty pointless. The fact that you're expanding a once or twice daily trip to the Los Angeles Basin is probably not going to be terribly effective in terms of improving your situation at the airport. Problem being, of course, is that you chose to spend your money on the terminal rather than the runways. And as a consequence, we are being terribly restrictive as to what can and come into and leave from the Crescent City Airport. It is for that reason that I don't use the Crescent City Airport, haven't since SkyWest left, and we were servicing Sacramento and San Francisco at the time. We haven't had a useful outlet out of the Crescent City Airport since that time, and this change to Advanced Air is unlikely to improve that situation, because when you go to Los Angeles, you don't go to LAX, you go to a regional airport that with the regional airport comes a number of issues that ordinarily you wouldn't have to address if you flew right straight into LAX. I doubt that advanced air will ever be able to make that happen. And I think that the report that we've just heard is rather, I guess I would say, over-enthusiastic. I don't believe we've had over 10,000 enplanements out of this county for some time, and that's half of what occurred the last year that SkyWest was servicing the airport here, primarily due to the fact that you can go someplace once you go to San Francisco or Sacramento. You can't out of Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the other issue you're facing is they don't offer service all days. I tried to use Advanced Air on May 25th or 6th, I can't remember, on my way back from Costa Rica, and there was no Saturday service. So I'm kind of stuck. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for fielding comments. I was just wondering, I thought I read that the airport had been given a federal grant to keep it up and running until September. And I was wondering what would happen after September, October, if we don't continue to get funding. And if there was that was one, and then if there was like a cost and revenue, like we were spending this much on the airport, and this is what these tourists are bringing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Nope. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I heard some public comment today that I think that would be best served for some of those members of our community to attend the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meetings. Specific to Mr. Straight's concerns, I'd welcome you to come to the airport with me to address some of the concerns you brought forward today and walk through those at least accomplishments we've had over the last decade. I think some of your concerns have been addressed, so I'm hoping that we could take a look at that together, and maybe when we have a chance after the meeting, we can connect and we could go through those concerns together. Yeah, after the meeting, we could connect, and I'd like to take you out there.
I can speak to the grant if you like.
I think that'd be useful, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
the grant that was awarded was just to fill in the gap between the period of time where Contour's contract would have ended. So the grant that we got was to apply to Advanced Air as a new service coming in. So it was basically the same pot of money, just being applied to a different air service. So that it's just that September date was just when the original contract would have ended. So there really wasn't a new grant. It was kind of a new authorization for the new air carrier. So it was just the same. That's the AES grant that we operate under, yes. Yep.
Any other comments? See you none. We will take a short break, just a 5-minute break, and we'll be back. We'll be adjourning and bringing and coming back in as the Board of Equalization. When we do. The Board of Supervisors reconvene as the Board of Equalization to conduct a pre-hearing conference on item AAA 2022-001, Ricardo and Autumn DiCellini Trust. Are we prepared? Move forward. Yeah. Do we swear our witnesses?
Yes. Please raise your right hand. State your name, please, your full name.
Brantley Cobb.
Please repeat after me. Do you solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in this issue or matter shall be the truth?
Yes.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for meeting with me today in regards to assessment appeal application 2022-001. My name is Brantley Cobb. I'm the Assistant Assessor for the Delaware County Assessor's Office. This appeal hearing was filed for applicant Ricardo and Autumn DiCellini Trust in regard to a supplemental assessment issued in 2022 for the completion of a single-family residence in 2021. The application notes that the applicant requested representation for this appeal by Mr. George M. Mavris. This appeal is scheduled to be heard during the next board meeting on July 23rd, 2024. The assessor's pre-hearing brief was submitted to the clerk of the board last week. If you would like a paper copy of the brief, please let me know. I brought some just in case. I need a copy or? This brief includes the suggested topics listed for discussion as noted in the Delaware County Board of Equalization and local rules, as well as 2 attachments. I would like to review these topics as a couple of them may have a rather large impact on the process of the upcoming appeal hearing. I will hold time for questions at the end of my presentation as well. Under 9.15A, status of exchange of information pursuant to Revenue and Taxation Code 1606, there has been no exchange of information requests by either party. Under 9.15B, requests for information pursuant to Revenue and Taxation Code 408 and 441. On 6/3/2024, the Assessor's Office initiated and mailed out to the DiCellini's representative, Mr. Mavris, a 441D request. At this time, the request has not been responded to by the applicant and or the representative. And for further clarification, see attachment A. Sending out a 441D request is not something taken lightly within the Assessor's Office, as there are many ramifications to sending out such a request. However, with the lack of information provided by the applicant, a 441D request was initiated on June 3rd, 2024. As of the submission of this brief, the applicant has not responded to this request. Failure to respond to a 441D request raises 2 scenarios that the assessor would like to bring to the board's attention. The first determines where the burden of proof lies in the order of the hearing process. Revenue and Taxation Code 167A says when there is an appeal for an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, the assessor holds the burden of proof, provided that the taxpayer has supplied all information to the assessor as required by law. With a 441D request not fulfilled up to this point, Revenue and Taxation Code 167A would mandate that the burden of proof shifts to the applicant, and the applicant would present their case first. The second scenario arises if the 441D request remains unfulfilled at the start of the hearing on July 23rd, 2024. If the applicant brings forward any of the requested information during the hearing, the assessor may request and shall be granted a continuance per Revenue and Taxation Code 441H. 9.15C, subpoenas pursuant to Revenue and Taxation Code 16094 and 5. No subpoenas have been requested or filed at this time. 9.15D, consolidation of applications for the hearing. There's no consolidation necessarily. Only one application has been filed, which was for 21-22 supplemental roll. Bifurcation of issues, attachment B. In section 4 of the application, the applicant's opinion of value is noting that the land and structure should both be reduced during this appeal process. This is an invalid use of the application 2022-001 as the land value is not eligible for adjustment during this appeal process. An appeals application can only appeal one type of assessment at a time, as noted in section 5. In section 5 of the applicant checked that this is an appeal for a supplemental assessment. In section 3 of the application, the applicant noted that the assessment number being appealed is 995-002-061-000. This number represents the supplemental assessment for the Proposition 13 base year value that was assigned for the completion of the new construction of the single-family residence. Also, the applicant checked box 2 in section 6C, stating that the reason for filing the application was for the base year value for the completed new construction. It is important to note that the land value is not reassessed in conjunction with the single-family residence's supplemental assessment. The land's Proposition 13 base year value was established in 2017 following the purchase of the property and has only been adjusted by the annual consumer price index that is mandated by the state and is not to exceed 2% per year. If the applicant wishes to appeal the land value as well as the structure value, there will need to be a separate appeal application filed for the assessment of the land. For this reason, the land should not be considered in this appeal process. The application clearly states the assessment type and number that is being appealed. The assessment type and number directly correlates to the value that was assigned to the completion of the single-family residence and not the land. 9.15F, factual and legal issues in dispute. These are all just revenue and taxation codes, property tax rules, and property tax annotations that we're going over today and possibly in the hearing. 9.15G, names of witnesses. There's no witnesses expected to be called at this time from the assessor's office. 9.15H, the order of testimony and anticipated duration of the hearing. This may change depending on the applicant's actions with the 441D request on who presents first and where the burden of proof lies. The anticipated duration of the hearing for the assessor's presentation will be approximately 20 minutes. And additionally, the assessor has been open to the possibility that the market value of the residence may fluctuate with newly provided information by the applicant. Prior to the original appraisal, staff performed a site visit during the midst of construction in January of 2020. Without permission to perform a site visit upon completion of the construction, the information that was gathered during the 2020 site visit was the best information available to the assessor when the original appraisal was performed for the completion of the single-family residence in 2021. After reviewing the fee appraisal attached to the appeal application, it was discovered that there were discrepancies in the characteristics of the single-family residence compared to what the assessor gathered during that January 2020 site visit. Prior to a 441D request being initiated, there were numerous attempts to gather such information from Mr. Mavris. The first attempt was by phone call in February of 2024. During that call, it's expressed to Mr. Mavris that our office was denied access to view the completed construction and would like to request the necessary information and a site visit in order to ensure an accurate and fair appraisal is performed. Mr. Mavris was receptive to this information, but after 2 follow-up phone calls, 1 letter, these requests went unanswered. It's also important to note that the property owner does have the right to refuse the assessor access to their parcel. As explained in Property Tax Annotation 290.0040, the homeowner has this right as there are other statutory rights the assessor can enact to gather the information needed to perform a fair and accurate appraisal. Some of these statutory rights are a property statement signed under penalty of perjury, such as the 441D request we sent out, a court order, as well as a subpoena. These statutory rights are paramount to the assessor getting the necessary information to perform an accurate and fair appraisal. Due to the fact that the information used to appraise the completion of the residence was obtained prior to the residence completion, the applicant's representative was unresponsive to the information request, and that there were discrepancies found in the characteristics of the applicant's fee appraisal. It was important that this information be obtained and a 441D request was initiated. As stated previously, this request has not been fulfilled at this time. The prescribed Board of Equalization Form 441D that was sent out to the applicant had a due date of 7/8/2024. If the applicant is willing to supply the assessor's office with the requested information by the appeal hearing on July 23rd, the assessor requests that a continuance be granted. This would ensure enough time to perform an accurate and fair estimate of value with the new information. At this time, I'd like to open up to questions from the board if you have any questions for me, but please keep in mind that I may not be able to answer questions that would be more appropriate for the appeal hearing.
Any questions from the board?
I just want break it down for me here.
Yeah.
Because this 441D was not filed timely,
But yeah, it was not responded.
we're not responded
Yeah.
to timely, that we're not ready to proceed even on the 23rd?
Not necessarily. So the hearing can still go forward, but if any of that information is brought forward by the applicant, then a continuance can be requested and has to be granted.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're missing information.
Sure.
To perform
Absolutely.
an accurate appraisal.
And so I suppose when we hear from Mr. Mavris, we'll know whether or not we're going to have that information, but it was due yesterday.
Correct.
Okay. And so as of today, we've not received it, could be lost in the mail, something along those lines, but we don't have that information. So at this point, we are going with the original assessment because there was nothing to prove otherwise.
Correct, and that's why the burden of proof would fall onto the applicant at that point because there's information being withheld.
Right.
And I should note that yesterday there was communication between me and Mr. Mavris, and they are going to try to provide that information.
Okay. Thank you, Brantley.
And just for further clarification, once you receive that, at that point, we're still only discussing the improvements, not the land.
Correct.
So the value that we're only going to be discussing during this process is the improvement of the structures.
Correct. So the total, because in the assessor's office, we have to separate value from land and improvements. So you can look at the total value, like the total, what's the market value as of this date. But the only value that can be adjusted is the improvement value, the structure value.
And so to improve, or to reassess the land value, that's another process and further steps. Maybe
Yeah.
another appeals process.
Because there are two different types of assessments.
Okay. That makes sense.
Apparently, did I understand you correctly that there's a date discrepancy on the date of construction of the residence versus, or improvements to the residence versus the appraisal? Did I catch that?
No,
Or
there's
did
this characteristics that we discovered in the fee appraisal that was attached to the application from the DeSalinis. They attached a fee appraisal done by, outside appraiser, and the characteristics of that home differ from what we gathered, almost 2 years prior when the construction was just in the middle of construction. And so that's why we need more information. Are we correct? Is the fee appraisal correct? There's discrepancies that we need to get answers to.
And this is the appraisal that we're presented with in the board report today, correct?
Yeah, the ones the DeSalinis and Mavris attached to their application, correct?
It looks like it's completed. I guess I'm just confused. It sounded like you were saying that there was improvements made or something since the site visit in 21.
Well, the completion wasn't constructed when we went in 2020. We haven't been allowed to the property since the property was under construction in 2020.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that's it. Mr. Mavris.
So on behalf of the Desalinis, pardon my
I need to
ignorance
swear
because
you in.
What's that?
I need to swear you in.
Sure.
Raise your right hand. State your full name.
George Matthews.
Do you solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in this issue or matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Sure. So I haven't done one of these appeals before, so I'm not actually all that familiar with the process. However, even in listening to Mr. Cobb speaking, why are you doing an assessment if the property's not done? I mean, he's saying we went in the middle of construction to do an assessment, came up with a number. I mean, I don't know what the point of that is. I know that they did at some point come to the Desolini's unscheduled, and Ms. Desolini said, you're going to have to schedule it. Mr. Cobb did reach out to me some time ago to ask to view the property, and the Desolini's weren't amenable to that. They turned over an appraisal from Accurate Appraisals, which is Dylan Ridgely, who looked at the property, came up with the value. When I received the notice of hearing, which comes 2 years after you file an application, the application was filed in 2022, nothing happens for 2 years, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, in 30 days I'm going to need all this information. Looking at it, it says no exchange of information is requested. In the hearing brief, no exchange of information is requested. That was what was testified here today. And yet, the next statement is, you haven't responded to my 441D, which is a request for information. You can see how people can get very frustrated. I know I'm not stupid, but I feel stupid looking at this hearing and trying to understand, what do you mean the land is separate from the new construction? Accurate Appraisal says the whole property, everything's worth $780, but apparently the supplemental assessment took the property up to $1.08 million. With the land, without the land, I'm not sure. I'll have to look at it again. But I did tell Mr. Cobb, as I prepared for this hearing, that I looked at the letter more closely, and it said, we want this information under 441D, which is enclosed. I looked, I didn't see the enclosure. So I sent him an email yesterday, was there something, am I missing something? And he said, yeah, there's this letter, which is addressed to George R. Mavris, not George M. Mavris. Not a big deal, that's not my middle initial, but okay, it was addressed to me. But it wasn't included in my letter. Maybe that was inadvertent, maybe I missed it, something happened, but I saw it and I said, okay, they're asking for things that are reasonable. I said, sure, I'll get that. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Desolini's child and my child were fortunate enough to win the junior state championships in Little League, and they start playing on the 24th. So I'm going to need to move the hearing anyway, and I'll get you this information. That's not mentioned. This is what's strange. It's very simple. I'll get you that information, and let's have the hearing when you're ready to do it. To me, it doesn't seem that complicated to get the information and just schedule a hearing when you have it. It wasn't intentional to not turn over. He's asking for things like, we want to know what type of windows you have in there. There's a lot of information that we want to see what you insured your house for. That's fine. We can get that information. It'll take a little bit of time. So what I would like to do today is just set a hearing date, give us a reasonable amount of time, I think 30 days or so, to get that information together. We'll turn it over and look at the assessment. But from a legal standpoint, and for someone who's not involved in this, if you were to go in court with an assessed value in a divorce case or something where people are fighting over the value of a house, and you say, hey, Mr. Cobb and the supervisors, the Board of Equalization says the house is worth $1 million, so each spouse is entitled to $500,000, that's not admissible in court as a value. It's considered, it's either too high or too low. It's just not considered a valid, and you see that with properties, A, because they don't get reassessed, or because it's just inaccurate. So we do want to pay the appropriate amount of taxes based on what its actual fair market value, what its actual value is worth, not what a value apparently done in the middle of construction. I don't know how you'd arrive at a value at a middle of construction, but apparently they did. So anyway, that would be our request. We have no objection to turning over the information they requested and setting a hearing date in a reasonable amount of time. And my apologies to Mr. Cobb for not having that information ahead of time.
Any question from the board?
I do, and I don't know who it's for. I don't know if it's for Mr. Mavris or Mr. Cobb. But in looking at the assessment, we're not really arguing the assessment of the structure. There's about a $40,000 discrepancy. What we're arguing is the value of the land. So I do think that can be done during construction. Value of the land is the land underneath it all. I'm not opposed to a continuance. I just want to know, is there any kind of waivers or anything legally that we need to do in order to make sure that it's within the time frame in order for us to be able to have this hearing? I don't want to miss out on it because we didn't do it properly.
So to answer the question on the continuance, waiver would have to be filed. It would extend the date of the 2-year deadline indefinitely, but that would have to be signed by Mr. Mavericks. So that would extend that deadline. In regards to, I have a lot of, I don't know if you have questions on what Mr. Mavericks stated, but
I guess it was more just of an observation that if I heard you correctly earlier, the land disagreement would have to be a separate thing altogether.
correct.
So if we're arguing over $40,000, which is fair. I mean, I'm not ever going to tell people that they can't stick up for their rights here. But the land is what seems to be more in dispute than anything else. And my observation is that the land shouldn't have changed value whether pre-construction or post-construction.
Correct. And that's why I wanted to set the pre-hearing today. Was the big issue is the land, because on the application, that's where the big difference of value is. But with the codes and rules, you can't, the appeal's not for the land. The appeal is filed specifically for the completion of the new construction. And the completion of the new constructions of the residence, not of the land. Land value has not been touched since they purchased it in 2017. It's only been going up 2%. We have reached out to, I don't know if you're familiar with a Prop 8 form, or a Prop 8 where we look at the value every year and do the lower of the assessed value and the market value. But we've reached out and sent one of those requests a couple years ago and got no response to it. We've done in-house appraisals on it to see if it would qualify for Prop 8, and those came back that it would not. But those are not issues of this appeal. But the land has been looked at by the office internally because of the application being filed, requesting the land should be lowered. So, in regards to the fee appraisal, that's for a completely different reason. And almost every time you have an assessed value and a fee appraisal, the assessed values of a certain date. The land's from 2017, the structure's from 2021. Those are two values that come together to make one assessed value. A fee appraisal is going to be at one specific point in time. And they're just for different purposes. We're just for property tax purposes only. As Mr. Maverick said, taking an assessed value to court to settle a dispute would not be appropriate because that's not the purpose of our valuation. I mean, you can buy your house for $400,000. Your neighbors had their house since 1975. They're being assessed at $60,000. That's Prop 13. That's property taxes. So assessed values, it will be market value when it's created, when that value is created, but ever going forward, it can only go up 2%.
And so then, what is your request for us today? Are you asking us to set this for the 23rd in order for this hearing to take place, or would you like us to grant the continuance with a waiver?
We've been more than open to work with the DeSalinis and come up with the fair value. That's all what our office strives to do, is come up with a fair and accurate value. We just haven't been able to get any information. Yes, the requests have come more closer to the 2-year deadline than when the appeal was filed, but we have the 2 years to hear that by law. But we would be more than open to moving that deadline and having a continuance as long as we get that information. If we don't get the information, then all the stuff I presented today would be,
Charlie has something.
Can I just state that we do have the actual hearing scheduled for the second meeting in July, and if they would like to do the continuance, that would be up to you guys, and we do have the form here available if Mr. Mavericks would like to sign, if you guys would like to agree on a date to extend, or do we want to, if you guys want to negotiate a date, I'm not sure how it works. If you want to move it to later in August, or what you guys are hoping for. I'm not sure how the process is. I don't want to step on any toes, but I'm just saying we do have a form here available. And right now we do have the regular hearing scheduled for the second meeting in July. And since they are requesting a continuance, if everybody has agreed upon it, we do have a form available here right now.
We're more than open that a stipulation could be on the table. And I would prefer to get the information first, perform a reappraisal. If we can't come to a stipulation agreement, then set the date at that time. That would be my approach.
Mr. Mavericks, could you just come up to the mic and state that for the record, please?
We would have no objection to that if you need me to sign a waiver, and if you want to set a deadline for that information, that's fine.
Can I ask some more questions
Miss-
before we do that?
Brantley, I just want to say, if you guys want to state to the board a good amount of time that you guys would need to do the reappraisal and stuff like that, and then we can maybe form a deadline, or are you not comfortable with that?
I don't necessarily think a deadline needs to be formed. I mean, as far as I'm aware, you can set a deadline, but when you do a continuance, it's not necessary. And I think we're both on the same page of we're going to get the information, we're going to do a reappraisal, and we're either going to come to a stipulation agreement or we're going to set a date. So we want to get it done. So any other question?
Yeah. So just on the land, and maybe you can't even talk about it because we're not dealing with the land necessarily, but its value dropped significantly. Is that a standard thing? Like, say if it was timber property and it was logged and now all the value's gone, is that something that?
Without getting into the land value specifically, because that might be more appropriate for the appeal, but a fee appraisal, the only time they separate their land value out is when they run the cost approach. So they come up with a value for the cost, and then they have to come up with a separate value for the land. And so when you put those two together, then you come up with your total value. And so when there's discrepancies in what we have compared to what he used for his land value. And like I said, when we did our internal Prop 8s on the total property value, because you can't just take one value and you have to change the whole value, it did not qualify for Prop 8 for the following years.
And then the question on how you set the value on without doing the appraisal, is it just like a square footage cost that you apply, or how do you determine that?
So yeah, in this situation, we use basically cost approach because the information's so limited on the quality of construction that when we went out in 2020, we got a square footage of the residence, and we didn't have at that time the fee appraisal that was done, that was issued, I believe a year or so, or not a year, within the 60 days after. And so we didn't have the quality information of the structure. So we based it on an estimate, or a appraiser's judgment is what it's called, and came up with a quality of construction and cost per square foot and costed it out per the characteristics we had of the home. And that just happens to differ than the fee appraisal, but every appraiser you have come up, you're going to have a difference of opinion of value by some margin. Shouldn't be huge, but by some margins.
Okay. That was all I had. Thank you.
We are still going to only be talking about the assessed value of the improvement. Right? So, I mean, even if we do set the waiver and all, the Salinas are going to have to do a different process to reassess the land?
The deadline with the land, it's a separate assessment. Right. And that assessment was established in 2017. To challenge that value that was done in 2017 would have had to been filed a year prior to this appeal application being filed. So they can challenge it yearly on a yearly basis and file an appeal on that, the total value of the property yearly, for that base year value established for the land in 2017. The deadline to file an appeal, separate appeal for that land, would have had to been filed even prior to this appeal being filed. That's why it can't be adjusted during this process. So,
okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to highlight, Brantley, before you leave the dais. I mean, we're up here as a board. We don't understand a lot of the codes that you spit out today, but we appreciate hearing it. But we have busy attorneys. We have a busy family and business here. I appreciate the amount of communication that's taken place, but it's tough to understand this stuff, right?
Agree, yes.
Right. And so any support and help you could give the family to get to that point, to get it back to us, I'd appreciate it, whatever room it takes. I don't like hearing from representatives that cost quite a bit of money coming to us to say, hey, I'm even confused by the process, because it's tough. So any hand you could lend to the process would be helpful.
Well, and that, as I stated, we've tried. We've not been responded to calls to Mr. Mavris went unresponded to, a letter went unresponded to, 441D request went unresponded to.
And I think I heard some of the reasons why. You guys are both busy people. Your department's busy. Mr. Mavris is extremely busy attorney in town. Doesn't handle these kind of cases and has to educate himself on it. So I think you guys could get there together is what I'm hearing today, and I appreciate that.
Correct, yeah.
Does this action require a motion?
I think we need to sign the waiver for the continuance.
I don't believe the.
I believe that is the request.
Jackie, can you clarify? I got a form here. Would George have to sign this today, or is this something that can be processed after today? Do you want to see the form? Sorry.
While everyone's here.
I don't believe it has to be processed at the end of the pre-hearing, because you can process this up to the day of.
Prior to July 23rd or 24th, whatever the day.
That's my opinion, but I mean,
Okay.
it'd be better to get it done
Yeah.
out of the way, but I don't.
Or just
believe it
legally
has to
we
be
should follow the
ruled on, you know. I think the only thing that has to be ruled on, because it's within 21 days of the hearing, is that the board has to grant that the continuance could happen. Because if it's outside the 21 days, it's each person's right to have a continuance, but within the 21 days, it has to be allowed by.
Then I will make the motion that we allow that 21-day.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Hold the vote.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey?
Yes.
Supervisor Short?
Yes.
Supervisor Borges?
Yes.
Chair Wilson?
Yes. Thank you for coming together on this. We're going to adjourn now as the Board of Equalization reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and receive a quarterly progress report by the Board of Supervisors strategic plan as presented by the Assistant CAO.
All right. Good morning, Board. So, as I'm sure you all recall, back in April, a strategic plan was adopted by the Board. The strategic plan contained basically 4 focus areas. The focus areas are really intended to address kind of foundational issues that through the course of engagement with the public, with the Board, with department leadership, it was kind of mutually agreed on were things that really needed to have some attention. The 4 focus areas were county staffing and capacity, infrastructure and economic development, law, justice and homelessness, and general governance and budget. And so specifically within those 4 focus areas, goals were established that were kind of intended to be the way that the board would be directing your staff, your resources to address really these foundational issues. One, I think, really important element to the board and to your staff was that this plan be something that had teeth, that was tangible, that would lead to outcomes, that would mean something. Oftentimes, and I'm sure the board is aware of this, and I believe the public is aware of it, you know, these sort of plans don't. They just, to use an overly used cliche, just sit on a shelf. And we didn't want that to be the case with this. So we did a lot of research leading into the development of the plan. We looked at, you know, what smart counties were doing, and we tried to emulate that. We observed what, you know, counties that weren't doing it the right way, how they were doing it. We tried to avoid that. And I'm really proud of the board for taking this action. I think, you know, it isn't perfect. We certainly had to put a lot of time constraints on trying to get something in place, but putting something in place, doing something, I think was better than the alternative, which was doing nothing. One of the ways to make this plan very actionable and known to all observers, the public, the board, stakeholders in the community, that we would be doing something would be through regular updates. And so as part of the action under the general governance and budget focus area, you asked us, your staff, to do that. So this is actually the first quarterly update that we're going to be giving every 3 months. I'll also point out, as I did during kind of the development of the plan, is that the platform that the board landed on for the development of this is really unique. It's by ClearGov. It's called Clear Plans. It's a new innovation in strategic planning that I think had the same recognition that the board did of this really needs to be transparent, available to the public, and we need to be able to see what's going on kind of behind the curtains with it. So Clear Plans is available as a public portal to anyone to log onto our strategic planning website. They can see exactly where we're at. Your strategic planning team, which is essentially your administrative staff, is meeting every 2 weeks and updating the plan as progress is made. And so again, this progress report today is going to be the first, hopefully of many, and hopefully you find value in information we're presenting. So the board report spells this all out. I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at it. As I noted, it's also all readily available through the Clear Plans portal on our website. But we did kind of break it down, at least initially, into the action items that were scheduled for implementation, leading into really what was the effective date of the plan, which was July 1st, which is the new fiscal year 24-25. Being that this plan was adopted in April, there were some things that the board approved kind of on the front end to kind of front load, some of those efforts. That's the focus of this progress report here today. We didn't get into giving you progress reports on things that we're not engaged in yet. Those are on the horizon. This was a 3-year kind of horizon for the plan. 24-25 was the first year, and then subsequent fiscal years 25, 26, 26, 27, and further into the horizon. So these first items were essentially scheduled and approved by the board as quarter 4 updates in 23-24, leading into the effective date of the plan. The first action item that was included under the county staffing and capacity focus area was a compensation analysis. How does the board improve within the staffing and capacity of the county? Well, you need to look at your compensation. I think we all recognize that, and I believe the board certainly did. And so the direction that was given to your staff on how to address the specific action item was let's do a compensation study. Let's bring in an objective opinion from the outside, somebody that can give you an informed set of information to base decisions on. And so we developed a request for proposals. The RFP was transmitted and posted to a number of potential independent entities that could help us with this analysis. And we do have 3 responses with varying degrees of kind of distinction within the 3 proposals of how in depth or not the compensation study would get. And based on preliminary review of those proposals, we do expect to present the board with a recommendation and hopefully a contract for these services in the very near future, potentially at the next meeting or 2. So really good progress to report on that. The second item under the county staffing and capacity focus area was the reorganization of the Human Resources Department. Currently, the Human Resources Department is technically a division of administration, and it's was under the supervision of a manager level position. Most standalone departments, I think virtually all, are under the direction of appointed authority by the Board of Supervisors. And so the board took action previously to establish that position. And so as part of the adoption of the 24-25 fiscal year budget, Human Resources and Risk Management was separated out into a standalone budget unit. And we are currently in the process of engaging with a professional on doing the recruitment for this HR director position. So really excited to see how that recruitment goes. We've never used the services of an executive recruitment professional before. That may be part of the reason why we've had difficulty in recruiting for some of these higher level positions. But we are hopeful that with the creation of a standalone department, that giving it this extra energy, results in hopefully better outcomes. So that progress is well underway as well. Happy to report that. The second focus area was on infrastructure and economic development. And action item 1A under this focus area is going to essentially revise the approach we take to our county capital improvement planning process. It's really siloed currently. Arguably, it's outdated, clearly very ineffective. And so under the strategic plan, what the board adopted was kind of a re-envisioned way of doing capital improvement planning, which was more holistic, more integrated, and bringing together our public works, our building maintenance, our administration, and fiscal people, so those conversations can happen in a more collective way, which I think is going to yield better outcomes. So this action item is underway. We've had preliminary discussions between the departments that I just mentioned, and the outcome of this is going to hopefully lead towards the development of a new capital improvement plan for the county that better reflects the needs and resources of the county. That will involve a couple procedural things. We need to update the administrative manual. We need to redelegate some assignments under existing job descriptions and classification descriptions. But that will all be underway here in 24-25. This next item under infrastructure and economic development, probably more clearly on the infrastructure side of this, would be the jail rehabilitation. So as we've been discussing for a little bit of time now, the jail was fortunate to receive federal funding through a federal earmark, a little over $3 million. Fortunate in that, it's $3 million that the county didn't previously have to do this really important work. The difficulty with this situation is that the need exceeds what's provided. So we had previously engaged with the BSEC through technical assistance and identified that the need for the project at a bare minimum to address kind of the highest priority issues was likely going to be a project more in the range of $9 to $10 million. So how do we bridge the gap in funding? Well, I am very happy to report that we've secured roughly a little over $2 million. So we're a little more than halfway there. And that means we can begin the design. There are definitely other avenues to obtain the additional funding through conversations with iBank on securing the financing that would be necessary to do that, and potentially other sources. And so we are now at a point in conversations with the federal agency that we're working with, who provided the federal earmark, USDA, on executing a contract for the design services with our architects. So that's pretty exciting to be able to see some progress on that. It's been quite an ordeal and quite a process to navigate all the federal funding steps and even securing the earmark after it was approved. But we're there, so that's very exciting to report. The next project under infrastructure was previously discussed this morning, and that is the public space projects to improve the parking facilities of the jail, the courthouse, and the sheriff's office, and the Veterans Hall. I don't know if I need to rehash everything that was already discussed this morning, but essentially the project was originally cost estimated at a certain value. We did the design. The design was completed. We released the bid documents to any potential contractor that would be interested in submitting a proposal, and the proposals unfortunately came in higher than the original cost estimates. So while the design has been completed and now the board has authorized the additional use of funds, we had that issue previously with again kind of a gap in funding and what was available, but now, thanks to the board's approval, we'll be able to move forward with presenting a contract to the board for authorization for those services. Next project, I'm definitely not going to spend much time on this one, is the encampment resolution funding project. And Renelle's here if she would like to give any sort of an update. I believe an update is coming later formally, so don't need to necessarily get into anything beyond what maybe has already been shared with the board directly from the director on the ERF project. But again, well underway. The next under the same category of focus area, which I should have previously noted, is the law, justice, and homelessness focus area. is the Youth Prevention and Intervention Program. This was the probation department's Prop 64 grant, which is currently being implemented by the probation department. And I won't speak for the probation department, but I did include in your board report kind of a summary of where things are at that he did, that Chief Raymond did review and suggested was basically accurate. And he's certainly available if there's any follow-up on that. Moving into the last focus area of the strategic plan, which was general governance and budget, we have the retention of core services. And through the board's adoption of the recommended budget at the last meeting, that is in process. It's I guess you could say on track. And then obviously there's going to be a process of getting from the June budget to the October budget. That's going to involve some further conversations. But retaining core services, I guess you could summarize it to say that it's in process. The OPEB policy, which is the second focus area dealing with the county's post-employment benefits liability for employees, is still needing to be developed. The board did approve a pension policy, and this would be kind of a similar undertaking when it is initiated, but we haven't, just with everything else that I already mentioned, plus just the day-to-day operations, that's one we haven't been able to get to yet. I think there was some initial hope in including it with the Q4 items that it could be maybe coupled with a pension policy, and didn't ultimately end up happening. So the OPEB policy is something we'll need to continue to work on. The minimum wage analysis, actually, this item was included within the RFP for the comp study and the structural analysis. And so when a contract is presented to the board for the pension or for the comp study, one of the things you're going to see is that we did request the services of providing analysis with respect to the effects of a likely increase in the California minimum wage, and any recommendations that would materialize from that certainly will be available to the board for consideration. So I would say that that's also in process. Implementation of the ERP, which is the Enterprise Resource Planning software system. This is the county's new budget system. This is a huge project, and that's probably underselling it. It's investing a lot of staff, time, and energy. It's going to be completely remaking the system that the county currently utilizes for budgeting. There's going to be, obviously a ton of really good things that come from this. Better access to the budget information, more timely information being available, the processing of claims in a more timely manner. It's gonna be a really big deal, but it's also involving a lot of time, energy, and it's proving to be a pretty heavy lift, but it is happening. And then lastly, under the general governance and budget would be just, again, what I alluded to at the beginning, which is providing these sort of updates to the board, let you know that everything is moving forward as it is, being honest where things aren't, like with the OPEB policy, and again, letting you know that it's all available in a very easy to obtain way through the portal that we've created online. And I'm definitely available if there are any questions.
Any questions or comments for the board? Appreciate it, and I know in our last board action, we accelerated our plans for economic development because of the changes in the trike agency. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, just was going to repeat, appreciate the energy you're putting into this and the timeliness of it.
That's going to bring us up to item number 21. Does anyone have any public comment on this this presentation on the strategic plan?
So you got a plan, and sounds like you're working towards results. I don't know whether any of you pay any attention to the boards outside of your bailiwick, but I've been attending the school board meetings lately, primarily due to the fact that they've got this $59 million bond being put on the November ballot. In any event, while I was there for that discussion, they were also talking about employee compensation, the fact that they'd done a study of the immediate area, Lake, Mendocino, Humboldt County, and determined that their compensation package for the certified employees was actually fairly good in comparison. In fact, in some categories, they were in the upper third of the surrounding counties. Of course, when the teachers started talking in their public comment section, they discussed the fact that friends of theirs that had come from Del Norte County originally were now teaching in other areas in the state where the compensation was modestly improved over what we were receiving here in Del Norte County. But what was kind of interesting in the course of the conversation was that the fact that you may make more money outside of the county and outside of the area, but the cost of living is also a factor. The other thing that was interesting was the fact that not only do teachers look at compensation, but they also look at the quality of the workplace. They also look at the quality of the area in terms of what's available for entertainment and spending their money. They also look at housing. They also look at a considerably wide variety of factors, which is probably going to be pretty important when you talk to your employees, despite the fact that you've put a plan in place. You're going to have some real issues coming up in that regard that the plan is not going to be able to accommodate. So I'm thinking that perhaps you may be in for a bit of a struggle here going forward when it comes to implementing your plan with regards to your employees, with regards to things other than the simple fact that you're going to have to pay them more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Norma Williams, Chapter President, Del Norte County Employees Association, SEIU 1021. In regards to your compensation analysis project, it'll be interesting to see if the final proposal or RFP that's presented to you will come at or under what you paid nearly 3 years ago for the collective good. That was $157,000, and that actually told you what we've known since 2016, and that is we are all grossly underpaid. Doesn't take any really comp analysis then, in 2016, or in 2022, or even now, to tell you that employees are grossly underpaid. Your vacancy report, the vacancy report that we request and receive from your team, tells us that. It shows us that. I don't know if you're privy to that. Maybe you should ask them for that. But if you take a look at each department, you will see that there are vacancies. And it does have to do with wages, but it also has to do with a lot of other factors. Obviously, housing here in the area, what's offered here, what's not offered here, what we have to utilize and go to outside of the area. Those are all other factors, as well as what I once called the isms that negatively impact employees while they're working here. And all those isms factor into a work environment, which is not conducive. So it'll be interesting to see what your analysis does come up with, because I know that the union and the other labor groups will be interested in that as well, along with your structural analysis, and also factoring in, which is now what I just found out, Prop 32, which will be on the November 5th ballot, which is in regards to raising the state minimum wage to $18 an hour. However, you have to also take into consideration what just became effective April 1. Yes, it may have been just for one particular sector of jobs here in California, but when you're looking at raising wages in that particular area to $20 at minimum per hour, county employees take a look at that too. So just to keep that in mind. In terms of what you're going to be doing with building maintenance and public works, Obviously, when there are any job descriptions or even as a result wage adjustments that will impact employees represented by our union, I am sure that your team knows the process in order to work with the union in regards to that. I'm not exactly sure that you do, but I know that we will be working with your team on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the board. Any comments? Nope. All right. Then we will move on to item number 21, discuss and give possible direction and authorize the use of county EMS funds to fund a complete competitive bid process for exclusive operating area ambulance services for Del Norte County, which would include the cost of North Coast EMS to prepare and administer a competitive bid process for a consultant, as well as the cost of selective consultant to administer the competitive bid process for an ambulance service provider, and contingent on item 1 being approved, and 2, discuss and give direction to North Coast EMS whether the board would like the consultant to include language in the request for proposal for a successful ambulance service provider to reimburse the county for the cost of a competitive bid process, and also contingent to the approval of the item 1. 3, authorize the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services to select up to 3 staff members to represent the county in the review of the responsive bids in collaboration with North Coast EMS representatives and consulting services to administer the RFP as requested by Supervisor Short.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I brought updates to the board over the past few months about my meetings with North Coast EMS JPA, and fixing a little bit of language that was put into the minutes as part of this process, where the North Coast EMS JPA said that the county was going to create and administer the RFP for the consultant for the seeking of the, or for the competitive bid process. That was incorrect. The correct place for the administration of that process is in the hands of North Coast EMS. So that through the North Coast EMS JPA, we have corrected that and agreed that they will be the ones to administer that process. As part of our discussions, and way back when we made the decision to go with the competitive process, we talked about the county finding funds to pay for the consultant. Of course, that was all contingent on the EMS JPA agreeing, so it's been a lot of back and forth. So we've finally hashed out all those details. So, and we have found a fund that is eligible to be used for paying for this consultant. So that is what we're bringing forth today at on the first part of this agenda item. Number 1 is we need to agree to use county EMS funds to fund that competitive process. And as was just read, then we have a small discussion about including language for reimbursement of those funds. And then also we need to put together a small group to evaluate the competitors for the consulting part of that bid process. So I'm open for any questions or discussion if you would like.
Is it okay, Chair? Yes. Okay. One is the EMS funding. How much is currently in that fund? I have it. I was just asking.
Yeah.
It's 243 is what was in the department allotment for last year. It might grow a little bit this year. The high end on this is going to be 150,000. Is that fair to say for this RFP?
That's what we were told by North Coast EMS. I know in our board report there's a different amount that Tony found that is higher. I don't know where she got that. I'm sure that she, talking to other consultants,
okay,
found different figures.
So, I mean, I when looking at the budget, it looks as if, certain amounts revenue-wise comes in every year. And so when it's not spent, that's this rollover. We have about 300,000, it looks like, in the department allotment. 243 as of last year, sorry. My concern is if we're upwards of 150,000, we're greatly reducing that amount in that fund balance. That would be number one. Number two, don't we pay North Coast EMS? I mean, I'm not saying that they have to absorb the entire cost, but aren't North Coast EMS, isn't that one of their functions, is to be doing this type of work on behalf of the county?
I would have to refer to North Coast CMS to say whether it was not their function. I don't know if the county pays that directly or if the ambulance service itself pays their yearly piece into North Coast EMS. I know that they have never done this competitive process before, so they don't really have the mechanism in place to.
They didn't do it for the city of Eureka? I thought that I had read that
they didn't do the competitive process.
They did the grandfathering.
They did the grandfathering, which they just gave it to them.
Okay. We did vote. We have to, we did vote to put this out for the RFP, and so at some point we need to actually go through with that. If I could just add on whether or not the board would like the consultant to include language for the request of proposal for the successful ambulance service to reimburse. I'm pretty much against that. I think that, unless that's a practice that we use for all RFPs, I don't think that that's necessarily fair for small business, small operations to have to pay $150,000 to $200,000 just to win the bid, just to pay to play. And so I would be opposed to that. I do agree that, representatives from DHHS would be a fine selection to go through and review in collaboration with the North Coast EMS, to review the RFPs as they come in. But I would be very opposed to the language in there that the ambulance service has to reimburse us.
Just in answer to that, the most recent process that I know of that has happened in California was Napa County, and they had 6 responsive bids to their RFP for a consultant. I called each one of those consulting firms, and only one of them from back east said that they don't typically put that in their bid packets, and another one said that they don't unless it's asked to be done by whatever agency's asking. All the other 4 said yes, it's common for that to be in there. So just take that for what it's worth. That was the feedback I got from the 6 firms. I can tell you what those are, but
Yeah, I think they're in there, but Napa County is just different than Del Norte County, right? Napa County has this opportunity to make a whole lot more money, to go and have more calls and all that. It really, I think, puts Del Norte Ambulance at a huge disadvantage out the gate. And it's just something that I'm not willing to do. I want them to put in a bid for the RFP. I want them to, compete with the other people putting in that process. I just don't think adding this additional clause that they have to then pay for it if they're successful, I think that puts them at a great disadvantage.
I understand where you're coming from. I was just wanting that conversation to be had here at the board, whether it be a partial payment. It's coming out of the county coffers, so I thought it was a conversation that just needed to be had.
If you include that, they're just going to include it in their proposal, right? Like that'll just be a cost of the bid process, right? But then who's ultimately going to be paying that back? It'd be the people who use the ambulance, right? In the end, they would just tack on the cost to the consumer.
I guess you could say that it would come out of their profits, and they're going to
factor that in.
They're going to factor that in. I imagine you're right.
I appreciate the amount of energy you put into this. It's a fairly complete board report. I do have some concerns based on the submissions of the 2 attorney opinions specific to that item number 2. I do think we have to weigh those heavily. in our decision-making process, and I'm kind of leaning towards Supervisor Starkey's concerns associated with that, especially with small businesses in our area. So I am essentially not for having that reimbursement by them if they were to win the bid, or any small business for that matter. So I do share those concerns.
My concern, of course, is one of, I wasn't in favor of the RFP process going out to bid on this. We have several years remaining on the existing contract. Given the climate that we currently find ourselves in California, I count ourselves very fortunate here in Del Norte County that we have a hospital that's functional, that has expanding its services to our community, oncology, et cetera, as well as having beds for recovery, beds in place. And so as we find ourselves with a hospital that is functional and an ambulance service that is functional, that is staffed, that has good equipment, I can always find fault and complaint with any agency, any service, any provider from time to time. But as I find counties up and down our area that are struggling because their hospitals are closing and their ambulance services are not functional, and they struggle to try to find someone to come into those areas to provide that service, we have to be very cautious that we do not do damage to our own services that we currently have that are functional, that are providing good services to our community in the process of seeking a RFP process that isn't necessary at this time because we already have an existing contract and they are working under that contract for another few years. Thank you.
And just in response to that, checking with the consultants and as to how long this process is going to take, we are just about at the correct place now to start this process to get done by the end of, or by June of 27. So that's why we were bringing it back at this point, is because we're told this is about the amount of time that consultants will need to do their work.
If you may, Chair. Yes, Supervisor Short. Obviously Supervisor Wilson and I were not for the current direction, but we do have a direction now. Since these conversations have taken place with the North Coast EMS, have things improved, in your opinion?
I would have to ask all the fire departments again.
I guess it's, yeah.
Have things drastically changed? If they have, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously our geography is what it is. Sometimes it takes a while to get places. Sometimes we as a community can be very critical. Obviously, I've expressed my concerns with this process. I do understand now that the current provider, Del Norte Ambulance, is requesting this exclusive operating agreement. That's why I guess we've gone out to a competitive bidding process. Maybe that's great, maybe it's not. And as Supervisor Wilson has expressed, I guess I don't want to see things damaged with our current relationship with our provider if nobody else comes in during this process. But we'll see. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I do appreciate the efforts you've put into this.
Thank you. And credit where credit's due. I believe maybe Tony put this board report together. Am I guessing correctly? Teamwork? All right.
Good job, teamwork.
I can't take credit for this one, but thank you, Chris.
There was a lot of first person in there, so I just assumed.
Yes, there is. I was surprised at that when I read it.
The only benefit, like I say, if we do go forward with the RFP is so that within that request for proposal, the metrics that we request and need, which are vastly different than what we are currently being provided by North Coast EMS, would have to be added into that. And that basically would include their time of call and time of response, which we don't currently get that information. But that is one of the critical complaints and criticisms that is thrown around. And whatever metric we put forward, the RFP would have to include those kinds of analysis that we would require during whoever receives the RFP would receive and be kept appraised of and being monitored for. Not only the quality of their work, which they do have that being done, where they come in with random analysis, looking at the documentation behind each of the calls, but also shoot time, which is not nearly as critical as which is currently in the report to us, which is not as critical to our community as the time that the call was received and the time that they arrived on scene, which are the issues that seem to be most prevalent in complaints of a delay in response.
Yeah, this transportation plan is going to be vastly more comprehensive than what we have in place now. I've read quite a few of them where they break up their counties into zones, and their response times into each zone is broken down. Also, what I'm mostly looking forward to is the treatment metrics that are met during the calls as well. Those are going to be much more strictly looked at. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys, unless there's
I had two
anything
more
else.
questions for you.
Two more?
The fund that you found that had the 300,000 or whatever it was, what is that typically used for, and how much is gained to it annually, or however it's done?
That's a Rennell question.
And are we going to be impacting any significant thing by using that fund?
Just for clarity, that's Fund 136, Department 436, Emergency Medical Services.
Sure.
Is where
Yes.
that's coming.
And that is correct. So typically, we utilize most of the revenue annually. The revenue sources are court fines, or from the vehicle code and government code. But over the past few years, and then those funds are designated to be distributed by a certain percentage, 10% administrative costs, 58% to physicians and doctors, typically for indigent aid who can't pay for the services. That's where we pay for those. Hospitals, and then there's some discretionary percentage in there as well. Over the last number of years, I don't know if it was due to COVID or what happened, but we haven't been getting billed from doctors and hospitals. So separately from this conversation, we're researching that since I became the director, and we started looking into this fund more about what do we need to do with that. We actually have a meeting this afternoon with Sutter Coast to talk about that piece. But my point is, typically we don't carry a large fund balance, but it has added up because there has been not as many billings received.
So currently, with the funds that are in there wouldn't be a significant impact to any services provided if we utilized it?
No. Usually for the doctors, they can bill, a year prior. So we may still receive bills from, the past year that we would pay for out of those funds. But we always annually get new revenue to cover that. And by statute, I believe we're only required to cover up to what our revenue is. So, we don't cover all of the expenses or bills that we could potentially receive. But that's the way it's laid out.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my other question was, I guess, Chair Wilson, you mentioned the impact to the hospitals and hurting the relationship with the hospital, but I didn't see that in there, or I didn't, unless I missed it.
No, I was just indicating that during this period of time, economically, what we were looking at throughout our communities is we're seeing the collapses of hospitals in our counties are adjacent and further down south. We're seeing their ambulance services failing. And currently, we have a good hospital. We have good services. We're fortunate to have a ambulance service that's fully staffed and equipped. And I count our blessings. I think we really have an advantage there. And as we move forward on issues like this, we are, again, courting a bad time to look at significant changes in service providers when service providers are not necessarily going to be able to come into our community and provide what we currently have. And I don't want to put a lot of having a successful operation at risk by the actions that our board takes.
And by doing this, we're not excluding anybody, right? I mean, if they're
No,
they're doing
they
a
would
good
be
job
able
and
to,
they're the
they
only
would be
ones,
able to
then
go
they got
forward
it.
with an RFP, absolutely.
Oh, okay. And at this point, it would cost nothing to them.
If we move with using the EMS money, it would cost them no additional. I mean, it's going to cost them money anytime that you put staff time to an RFP process. It is a dedication of time and cost associated with putting those kinds of complex documents per performance and putting them forward, just like any other RFP process. It's not free. It's going to cost them something.
Okay, that was all I had.
So if you need me to, I will make the motion that we give direction to use county EMS funds to complete the competitive bid process for the exclusive operating area RFP. I guess we have to get that one done first.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Am I talking to the portraits on the wall, or am I talking to the five of you? So I'm understanding that the county's going to spend some money, well, the taxpayers are going to spend some money, or the people that use whoever's the ambulance service is going to spend some more money. So by taking this action, you're going to cost us all some money. There's not much question about that. If we get the same ambulance service out of the deal, I'm kind of wondering how they're going to feel about getting thrown in the washing machine and spun around and then end up being the choice of all of the people involved, or we get a new ambulance service and we know nothing about them. We don't know how they're going to perform until they've actually been here and performed. Sounds like you've created a number of problems for not only yourselves, but for the community, for something that, I mean, as far as I could tell, only the fire departments were not on board with. So I'm kind of concerned that you're getting jerked around to do something that probably is not beneficial to the community at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for a vote.
Chair, and speaking with Director Brown here, it would be revise that motion slightly to say not to exceed the available funds in the EMS fund.
Oh, very good. Yes, I can do that.
And I will agree to second that new motion.
Do you have that? Okay. Pull the vote, please.
Supervisor Howard?
No.
Supervisor Starkey?
Yes.
Supervisor Short?
Yes.
Supervisor Borges?
Yes.
Chair Wilson?
No.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we give direction to, oh no, I take that, I apologize. I believe that we are going to forego the including of the language, so I will make a motion on number 3 that we authorize the Director of Department of Health and Human Services to select up to 3 staff members to represent the county in the review of responsive bids in collaboration with North Coast EMS representatives for consulting services.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, bring it back. Call the vote.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey?
Yes.
Supervisor Short?
Yes.
Supervisor Borges?
Yes.
Chair Wilson?
Yes.
So Chair, just for clarity, are we just gonna skip number 2 then?
Yes, because it was basically we had the discussion, but we're no longer putting that language in. So.
Okay.
That brings us down to legislative and budget issues. Consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pursuant to the County of Del Norte, authorizing the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state and federal governments. Receive an update on the status of county and federal earmark requests and projects presented by the Assistant CAO once again.
So, this is actually a follow-up to, I want to say, a meeting in March or April where we presented after one of the technical advisory committees had previously vetted a kind of a list of ideas for county requests for federal earmarks, where the board authorized submitting 2 earmark requests this year to Congressman Huffman and Senators Padilla and Butler. As the board is aware, the federal earmark process is kind of reinvigorated after kind of years of dormancy. It was reinitiated in federal fiscal year 22. And the county, the board, we as an organization have been very successful with these earmark requests. Beginning in fiscal year 22, when we received the appropriation for the jail, federal fiscal year 23, where we received an appropriation for upgrades to the computer-aided dispatch and records management system at the sheriff's office. And then, as the board is aware, as we reported earlier this year, a federal award for improvements to Pike Field. So had a pretty good batting average, actually 3 for 3. And then this year, under the federal fiscal year 25 projects, we submitted 2. We actually just received notification, and this is the point of the update today. Congressman Huffman has declined the county's request for South Beach, but Senators Padilla and Butler have actually both accepted the county's request for the Veterans Hall. So 1 for 2, still a pretty good batting average. The Veterans Hall project now needs to go through kind of the sausage making process in DC. Our federal advocate, Mr. Burns, has advised kind of caution, as it still has to kind of work its way through a pretty tumultuous situation out in the Capitol. But again, just to give the board and the public kind of an update on the status of the 2 projects, we were excited about making some improvements at South Beach. You know, we still have the project conceived of and kind of put together. As other opportunities present themselves, we will definitely be bringing it to the board to see if it's something the board is interested in pursuing. But for now, at least on the federal fiscal year 25 earmark, the focus is going to be on improvements to the Veterans Hall. We put in a request for $1.5 million, and that has been accepted again by the senators. So we are hopeful, cautiously optimistic, and we'll see what happens. So just wanted to give you guys that update.
Thank you for the update. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Hooper, I haven't talked to John Driscoll, Congressman Huffman's representative. We haven't had success potentially in the past, other than with Pikes Field with Congressman Huffman. Was there a reason given, out of curiosity, why you wouldn't carry this year?
Yes. As you can imagine, as the earmarks have become more popular, cities, counties, nonprofit organizations, tribes, special districts, there's a lot of competition. And so initially, when I think this program was becoming kind of invigorated, there wasn't that same level of competition. And so the reasons that were given had to do with that we're kind of overwhelmed with the number of requests. They were only able to take a certain number forward, which is not very many. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it really isn't very many. And so it really came down to that. They weren't discouraging. They weren't indicating at all that it wasn't a worthwhile or great idea. It just came down to, there's only so much pie to go around.
Does the Senate access that same pie?
Yes.
So, but they have a larger constituency to represent. I guess I'm trying to understand
That's a good question.
The nuance here.
Yeah, the House rules and the Senate rules are different in terms of how they can put requests forward. It actually changes year to year in terms of who's in charge of the appropriations committees and how the rules are kind of established. yes, the Senate's rules are a little more open in terms of how many requests can be put forward. I believe in the House, again, I don't remember the exact number, but it was very limited per district how many requests could be recommended by the representatives.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
I just want to just say that while Congressman Huffman may have passed on us this particular project, this particular time, I do think that they are looking into the Performing Arts Center and that request that they've put forward with Huffman's office to see if we can't get funding that. So our community still may benefit. It just may not be in our the county's actual favor. I do want to just say that I have appreciated Congressman Huffman. So we've gotten the CAD system with the Sheriff's Department, Pikesfield, which is going to make some progress in with the improvements. And so there's a lot of work that has to go in on the front end of that to get these things ready to submit. And I know that you've put in a tremendous amount of work for those. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate it. Keep it going. Every year we've got to ask. And, you know, we'll definitely get some progress throughout the years.
Absolutely.
That brings us to the end of our items, and I want to adjourn the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Oh, did you have a comment, Sam? Sorry.
I just want some clarification. I have a hard time understanding what the assistant CAO, after the South Beach, apparently that's no.
That's no.
And then what happened after that?
The Veterans Hall, the request is being carried forward, but again, it's amongst many, and so whether or not we end up with anything out of that, but it is being carried forward by the representatives.
And then the Performance Center?
I have no idea. That's a separate ask by that group.
Yeah, the Performance Center has actually put in a request that may be considered.
Perfect, thank you.
But that's not through the county, that's separate.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask one quick question, maybe procedurally?
Go ahead.
From the comments that we had today, probably noting that we probably should be in lockstep with the city as we move forward with these discussions. Do we have to, I know that Valerie and I are on a 2x2 with the city. Do we have to formally approve the 2x2 meeting with the city and the county to start these discussions about what to do around 4th of July, or is it just something we could just jump on? I don't know what
that would be
procedurally, I don't want to be procedurally incorrect here.
I think that's a good starting place. Go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, I believe Supervisor Starkey mentioned bringing it back to the board at the next agenda to discuss what we do moving forward. I know that in conversations with both the sheriff and the city manager, different approaches have been discussed with stakeholders in the community. I know they've already started conversations. I know that OES is looking at doing an after-action discussion about what happened. And then also I think that even an ad hoc committee has been brought up at one point, and whether or not through the 2x2, that's something that comes out of this.
Well, that's the exact reason why we have those groups together, is so that they can meet and discuss these issues, and their existence is for that purpose. So, you know, that would be a good venue to carry forward our at least our initials, and then from then they can decide whether they want to have, you know, a broader public type of event.
Yeah, I think the 2x2 would be a great place to start. Sounds like the board's on board with that, so.
Yeah.
Would you mind setting that up for us? Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. With that, we are closing the Board of Supervisors 2023. Thank you.